How did that happen? How did that whole connection happen? Because I mean, it seems like a fairly big jump, in terms of, career wise, where, you were playing in these bands, trying to get your career off the ground. And then all of a sudden, fast forward to like, the most famous, best known, and one of the greatest guitar players from one of the biggest bands in the world. And, you're playing on stage with them. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was surreal. It was the weirdest thing is that we had crossed paths in 1992, I want to say. Age of Electric had made a trip down to play some showcase things at the Whiskey A Go-Go and the Roxy right on the Sunset Strip. And we would hang out at the Rainbow every night. We didn't have any money. I don't know why they let us in there, but but we were there. And Slash was there very regularly. Lemmy, all these guys, you'd see them all the time. And then Slash just came over to our table one night and was like, "Hey, who are you guys?" And we were like, this is just before Use Your Illusions had come out. So maybe it was 91. I guess it was probably 91. And, they were the biggest band in the world, and Slash sat down with us, had some drinks, hung out with us. He has no recollection of that, by the way. I've talked to him about that on a couple of occasions. Fast forward 1,000 years later, and I'm like, our drummer, who's also Canadian, Brent Fitz, had been in like Theory of a Dead Man, Econoline Crush, a lot of things like that. And he relocated to Los Angeles, and he found himself. He just texted me one day. He said, "The new drummer from Slash is from Winnipeg," was all it said. And I laughed. I go, "Oh, okay. So he got the gig with Slash." I go, "That's awesome. I never intended to try and wedge myself in any way, shape, or form." I was like, "That's great." And then like a little while later, he called me and we're having some trouble with this position. "Do you want to come down?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I'll come down." And what I thought was just going to be a quick casual jam turned into, next week we're doing Leno and Craig Ferguson's show, which is now James Corden's show. And I was like, whoa, what? And it was really, I wasn't sure if it was going to be like, one of those like 3 months of fly out weekends, which just really got sucked into this black void of a year and a half on the road. The house I'm sitting in, I had purchased and closed on 7 days before I was gone for a year and a half, pretty much. So, here's my new house and goodbye, so good problem to have. And that was 11 years ago, 2010. And we are getting ready to put out a new record now. So by the time it comes out, it'll be 12 years of me doing this with this pretty much the same cast of guys.
Wow, that's incredible. So how did you find the transition? Because I mean, previous to playing with Slash, obviously you were, predominantly frontman / guitar player in all of your projects. How was the transition to, becoming, a bass player and, part of the rhythm section and stepping back?
I started in that position, actually, and I talk about it a lot. I talk about it a lot these days because people often bring up that question, but I started on bass. I was always one of those guys. Duff McKagan and I have had this conversation a lot, how like Duff was a guitar player and a drummer and he played a lot of everything. But when he relocated to Los Angeles, he took a look around and saw this level of guitar playing that was going on and said, "Well, I'll be a bass player." You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. And I was sort of one of those guys because I was never really interested in being Eddie Van Halen. I was sort of like, that's for those guys. But it sounds like a lot of time spent in your basement and in your bedroom playing guitar, and I was busy socializing and trying to be popular, I guess. I don't know. I liked playing music. I just didn't have that. I was a punk rock guy, so it was sort of like getting into the Ramones and stuff like that seemed like the ceiling. I was like, I'm happy right here.
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly.
Doesn't mean I can't get around on guitar and whatnot. I just kind of wasn't really interested in that whole avenue. And then it turned out, because I just wanted to be in a band, but it was sort of like, as it happens in any jam room or any basement, who is the least worst singer is usually how it works. Like who sings better than the other guys? And it sort of quickly goes like,
who sucks the least?
Exactly. Yeah. And I was happy just to be like, kind of like in the background going, isn't this fun playing in a band? And girls are actually talking to us, and then it's sort of like, okay, Todd's the singer. And I'm like, oh, okay. And, there's a great deal of responsibility. So I was suddenly Sting, with the bass and singing. And I would say Geddy, but I was not in that league. I was barely in, Sting's league, not even close. But I, sort of went into that world. And then it wasn't until my little brother, John, started playing bass that I moved over. So actually it was Age of Electric that really was the step where my youngest brother, not youngest brother, but my brother John picked up the bass. He was infinitely better than he's still better than I am. And we just decided, well, let's put a band together. I'll play rhythm guitar and sing, kind of thing. And then the other brothers from the Age of Electric came in, and that's how that kind of came down. So in a lot of ways, it sort of made sense. But when I came back around to the other side of things, when I came into the States, I sort of presented myself as sort of wearing a whole lot of hats and being sort of, I can do this, I can do that, I can do whatever you want in a lot of ways.
Utility man.
In a sense, yeah, because it was a lot about session work. It was a lot about fill-in work and whatnot. And it just sort of kept me busy. And I'm one of those guys that it's like, I really enjoy playing this role or that role. Like I be the bass player, I can be the singer, I can be the guitar player, I can be the guitar player singer, I can be the bass player singer, you know. So I could play keyboards if you really want to put a gun to my head. I could probably play the drums, but I would only play in some sort of garage band if you wanted me to. But yeah, so I just really like music that much that it didn't really feel kind of held back by one thing or the other. And when the bass playing position presented itself within Slash, it was just kind of like, that's exactly the kind of bass playing I come from. Duff and I come from a very similar school, although Duff was teaching at that school and I was just a student.
Right.
Like that. He was the Mr. Miyagi.
That's wax on, wax off.
Yeah, exactly.